Hello friends and welcome to Fire Emblem Discussion. So I put up a poll a day or two ago asking how familiar you guys are with the Fire Emblem series. And the results were honestly kind of as expected based on the content I've been pushing recently and also the release of Three Houses and also just, I don't know, some of the general questions and comments we get. It's indicative of people who are pretty new to the series, and that's awesome. I'm really glad you guys are here. So, being that 32% of you said you were newcomers at the time of me recording this, and 33 said you'd played some of the 3DS games as well, I thought it would be prudent, it'd be a smart idea for us to get into which games to go to next after playing Three Houses. So I'm going to talk about a few different subsections of Three Houses, different things you might have enjoyed, and if you enjoyed those parts of Three Houses, maybe move on to this game next, if that makes sense. So, well, let's start with this one. If you really enjoyed the quote-unquote romancing aspects of Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I know a lot of people are into, then you're definitely gonna want to go for Fire Emblem Awakening or Fire Emblem Fates, because those take that to and make it like a little deeper. It goes even deeper into the, again, quote-unquote romancing aspects and other things, and you get rewarded for doing it more than you do in Three Houses. There's actual tangible gameplay reward for growing supports between characters, other than stat boost and stuff like that. You also get things like, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, I mean, you probably know if you know anything about those games anyways. But yeah, if you make people fall in love and whatever, you get something as a result, and it helps you in the game, especially in Awakening, less so in Fates, but it's still a thing. So if that's your thing, but if you already played the 3DS games and Three Houses and you still want more of the romancing, again, quote-unquote romancing stuff, move on to, this one's a bit of a stretch, but as far as pairings go, pairing people up, the only game that really does that to that extent is Fire Emblem Genealogy: The Holy War, which you'll find on the Super Nintendo. Now, this game was only released in Japan, so there's no official release here in America, but there are tons of translations online, and one that is particularly good, which is called Project Naga. The Project Naga patch is actually really, really good, really well done. I would suggest using that one, of course, because the older ones are obviously just not as good. And so if you played the 3DS games, you've played Three Houses, and you want to get more into the series with another game that still has character pairings and stuff, Genealogy of the Holy War isn't a bad place to go, but I would suggest playing it there's a spoiler-free guide that I'll point you to. It'll be in the comments. Not in the comments, it'll be in the description. Because you should play blind, but you need to know some of the mechanics of the game before you get into that game, or you're going to be kind of frustrated, especially once you get about halfway through the game. Yeah. Okay, so now, if you really enjoyed the customization of each character and your army in Three Houses, then you want to move on to either, I honestly would say Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. There's a lot of customization to be had there. And honestly, any of the 3DS games too, with either Echoes, Awakening, or Fates, are going to be good choices for that. There's a ton of customization. Every character can change into a different class line in Awakening and Fates. And in Echoes, some of your starting cast can just branch off into any class path almost. So that is what I would suggest if you really like the open-ended gameplay. If you played all of those games, all the 3DS games, I would suggest going to maybe Fire Emblem Sacred Stones next, which is the 8th game in the series. It's on the Game Boy Advance. It has some branching path options, and it even has some trainee units that people will call them, units that start lower than even class 1. They're class 0, and then after a few levels they become class 1, but you have options that can go 2 different ones, and then from there even everybody promotes. They have 2 options for promotion, like in Awakening. So that's something to consider as well for that. Okay, and if you just really enjoy the top-down battles, just the number crunching, just the battles of the game, just that's what you're into, then I will point you to either Fire Emblem 7, which is the first one released in America, I think it's a great place for anyone to go, honestly. That game does a good job of introducing you into what's, I would call it, classic Fire Emblem. Sacred Stones isn't a bad jump either for that. FE6, so any of the GBA games, honestly, are a good starting point. FE6 is, again, only in Japan, but again, there's really good, there's a translation patch. There's a translation patch for that game as well that you can find that gets the job done. So, yeah, those three are good from there, I would say. FE7 is never a bad idea to go play, or FE8. They're both easy, accessible, and pretty good. But if you really want like that battle system that you thought was, I don't know, it's a little more simplistic in Three Houses. I mean, not in Three Houses. It's a little more simplistic in the GBA games. And if you haven't played the 3DS games, I would say go play Echoes next, because it has a very similar battle system. They honestly tested a lot of things in FE15 that they ended up using in FE16 to slightly better effect, but they're still there in Echoes. So that is something to consider as well. Okay, so now let's just say that you just love the entire thing. You don't have a single thing that you absolutely like latched onto, or maybe you just want to see what else Fire Emblem has to offer. And my personal recommendation for that, my personal favorite 2 games in the franchise are Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. So Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn are they're one story. Radiant Dawn takes place 3 years after Path of Radiance, and it's its direct sequel. So you'll want to play Path of Radiance first. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, Path of Radiance has a really good support system that gives you good insight into the characters. It teaches the player well how to play the game. It doesn't hold your hand too much, but it starts you off slow enough to where you can get into it. And honestly, it's not the most difficult game in the series, and it's easy to get into. Radiant Dawn, on the other hand, which is its sequel, continues the story. It is a grander, bigger story, kind of on par with like scale-wise as Three Houses. And the story falls apart in some places, but that's neither here nor there. I still enjoy it. I think it's still fun. But I think that those 2 games, playing them back to back, is a good idea for someone who wants to just get another taste of a grand story that Three Houses is, and that gives you a lot of the same stuff. There's skills. They play a lesser part, but they're still there. There's skills in those games. There's interesting characters, especially in Path of Radiance. There are support conversations in Path of Radiance. There are less so in Radiant Dawn, but there's still like info conversations that happen in the base that are still interesting as well. And yeah, those are great. Yeah. So now finally, let's just say you've played everything. Played all the English releases, because there's a good chunk of you that have played most or all of the English releases, 24% of you. What should you play next? If you want to move into the Japanese games. So my 2 suggestions for starting in the Japanese games are Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, so Fire Emblem 4, and Fire Emblem Binding Blade, which is the 6th title in the series. FE6 is what, like, I don't know, it started the GBA games. If you liked FE7 and FE8, you'll love FE6 too. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. They're very similar. If you like FE4, which is honestly a pretty big departure from the normal Fire Emblem formula, then you'll probably like just about anything in the series, and anything that the Japanese games have to throw at you. Real talk, like the most cryptic game in the series is Thracia 776, which is the 5th game in the series, and I wouldn't suggest anyone go definitely play Genealogy of the Holy War first before you play that one, but I would suggest playing that at some point. But again, play FE4 first, then FE5, because it's like a mid-sequel, prequel, whatever, garbage. You have to play the games to really get it, what it is. But it's a good game, and really, FE5 is kind of a solidified, standard, modern Fire Emblem. It has a few mechanics that are a little weird that we've never seen again, like capturing enemies and taking their stuff and then letting them go. It takes what like FE1 and FE3 did, which is like the Marth games. The games that, you know, like the guy from Super Smash Bros. Marth, that's where he's from. You know, taken from those games, and then adds a little bit to it. But that really like solidified, like, okay, this is Fire Emblem. After the experiments that were like FE2 and FE4, we got FE5, and then it was like, okay, so we figured it out, you know. But yeah, those are my 2 cents. If you want to get into the series, you don't know where to go next. I just kind of follow those general rules. I don't know. Again, the 3DS games, if you haven't played them, they're great for. They're never a bad. They're easy to get into. Like all 3 of them are. And then FE7 is great if you haven't played any of the GBA games. And if you want to get into the Japanese titles, I would start with FE4 or FE6. That's what I did. So I'll tell you my personal history real quick, actually, and tell you where I went. So my first game was FE7, which I didn't beat, and then I played FE9, beat it, played FE10, beat it like a bazillion times. And then from there, I dabbled. I played a little bit. I just like tried out the Japanese games. They were kind of whatever to me. And then I played Awakening and got really into the series again. And then from there, I went back and played everything. I played FE4, then FE5, and then played FE. I still haven't beaten FE2 or FE1 because they're just so painfully archaic. But whatever. And from then, I've just played everything. I can't remember the exact order of some of the stuff, but I've played everything now. And yeah, I mean, it may seem intimidating to get into this series that has 16 titles in it, but you can do it. And it's a really great community. There's some people that'll say it's toxic, quote unquote toxic, but I think it's fine. There's a lot of cool guys here. A lot of people that just like the games and like to talk about it. They may tell you you're wrong sometimes about certain things, but don't worry about it. But welcome to the community if you're new. Stay around. You know, continue to support other Fire Emblem YouTubers too as well. But don't forget me when you move on. But thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Fire Emblem discussion, as always. And comment your thoughts, especially you guys who are more veterans of the series. I'm interested to see what paths you took when picking a Fire Emblem game. So let me know. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time.